There we go. I can see it there on the screen.
Actually, should we go ahead on the stream? Yeah.
I don't know what the stream is.
Yeah, I don't have to use OBS anymore because when you have all the updated stuff, it streams right to YouTube. So you pulled up OBS and like, well, you've had in 3 years.
What were you saying last year? I was using that other laptop and it said, you need OBS or you need software.
Right,
I was like,
okay, so you're good. Your battery should be good, right?
well, if not, I've got power.
Yep.
We also got an extra battery for the computer. I mean, for the camera.
And you should, if you get to, I mean, it's got 370 minutes. You shouldn't run over 370 minutes.
Don't think we're going that long. God help us.
But it actually, if you turn it off and change the battery quickly, it actually, it'll go black.
Everyone heard you sighing.
Great. I'm gonna.
Quiet on the set.
I might have forgotten to warn you guys that keep in mind that
Oh
this
yeah.
means
Yeah.
the World
That's
Wide
why
Web could hear
forgot
it.
I just moved.
Everyone heard.
All right. Okay, good. So, if for some reason the entire world blows up, I'm 8 minutes away. Okay. All right. Yep. Good luck. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Do you know when you guys end? And then tomorrow or Thursday, whatever, get a phone from Wendy.
All I know is
It's something.
fast food restaurant.
Good evening. And I don't know who we have to thank for the weather, but unless it gets really cold, Jerry Miller we can thank for the weather. I was very pleased and honored to be elected as moderator on Article 1 when the votes were cast yesterday. Article 2 reflects the election of various officials, and rather than go through all the votes and the write-ins, I'll simply indicate those who have been honored by being selected for these positions. And I would ask anybody who has not yet taken the oath of office if they wanted to come forward and take their oaths of office. For Selectman, Martha Dudman was elected. For School Committee, Brian Henkel and James Whitehead were elected. And for School Trustee, Anthony or Tony Smith was elected. I would ask if you'd join with me in a show of appreciation for them. And they don't have to be sworn in at this point, so I will then move on to Article 3. Article 3 says to see if non-voters shall be allowed when recognized to speak during the 2021 annual town meeting. In this article, as in all the articles we're about to go through, I'll ask the warrant committee to make a motion in the positive and to second it, and that'll put it before us so that we can then debate it. Is there a motion from the warrant committee?
There is. The warrant committee recommends passage of Article 3.
And a second.
Moved and seconded by the warrant committee to recommend passage of Article 3. Is there any question, concern, or debate with regards to this article? This will be a good test article for us because we're voting with the white index cards. So I would ask everybody in favor of the motion before us recommending passage of Article 3, if you would please raise your white index card. Okay, thank you. And all those opposed, if you would please raise your white index card. As moderator, I determined that those voting in favor of that motion exceed those voting against by at least 2/3, which is the amount that's required in order to pass Article 3. Article 4, shall an ordinance dated May 4th, 2021 and entitled Town of Mount Desert Alewife Ordinance be enacted? The ordinance reads in its entirety, regulations for the taking of alewives and blueback herring shall be as follows. For the year July 1, 2021 through June 30, 2022, there shall be no taking of alewives and blueback herring in the town of Mount Desert. Motion from the warrant committee?
Warrant committee recommends passage of Article 4.
Moved and seconded by the warrant committee to recommend passage of Article 4. Question or discussion with regards to this article? Hearing none, we'll call Article 4 on for a vote. All those in favor of recommending passage of Article 4, if you would please so indicate by raising your white card. Thank you. Those opposed by raising your white card. Thank you. It's the opinion of the moderator that those voting in favor of the motion outnumber those opposing, and that therefore the motion, in fact, has passed. Now, Article 5 is the first of 3 articles tonight where we may have a motion to pass over the article. The effect of that is to skip over it and go to the next article. If we then adjourn this town meeting without taking any action on the article we've skipped over, then that article will basically have nothing done to it, and it would be available at any other future town meetings we might have. So Article 5, shall an ordinance dated May 4th, 2021 and entitled Public Right-of-Way Ordinance be enacted? And is there a motion from the warrant committee?
There is. The warrant committee would recommend passing over Article 5.
The warrant committee has recommended passing over Article 5 and seconded it, so it's now legitimately for us to discuss this motion to pass over. And I would ask if Tony Smith was available, that perhaps he could address why this article we're being asked to pass over it.
Don't even know way back.
Way in the
Oh.
back of the car.
Here you go.
If nobody has any questions, you can probably just ask them if anyone wants Tony to speak about it.
Well, he's here. Yep.
I can take the meeting.
Nice try.
The red line changes, the underscores and strike throughs that identify changes did not make it into the warrant.
So I think the concern is that somebody looking at would only see what the warrant would end up looking like without seeing what it was before.
Exactly right. There's nothing really to base any questions on with me or others. They didn't make it, that or the application.
Okay, thank you very much, Tony. Any questions of Tony? Any further question or discussion with regard to the motion to pass over Article 5? Hearing none, I'll call that on for a vote. All those in favor of the motion to pass over Article 5, if you would please so indicate by raising your white cards. Okay, thank you. And those opposed by raising your white cards. Thank you. It's the opinion of the moderator that those voting in favor of that motion exceed those voting against, and that therefore Article 5 is passed over. Article 6, shall an ordinance dated May 4th, 2021 and entitled Amendments to the Land Use Zoning Ordinance to add a definition of footpath and exclude footpaths and sidewalks from certain setbacks be enacted as set forth below. And there then follows in the warrant, beginning on page 6, and as the article that we are going to be voting on. Is there a motion from the warrant committee?
The warrant would recommend passing over Article 6.
Okay. Or you're recommending passage of Article 6?
Yes.
All right. Moved and seconded by the warrant.
No, passing over.
I think passing over is Article 7.
No, I think we have an addition.
No, okay, so you, all right.
We are recommending passing over.
All right, then let's stop for just a minute here. So the warrant committee is also recommending passing over Article 6.
We are.
Okay, and seconding it. Okay, and with regards to the rationale, I'll call on Noel Mussum to speak to that.
Yeah, this article has the same issue as the one Tony just described, where the new definition language needs to be underlined in both. So the article, the footpath is all new definition language, and setback has a few areas that are not underlined in the warrant.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Any questions of Noel with respect to the basis for the warrant committee's appropriate motion to pass over? Hearing none, I'll call that on for a vote. All those in favor of passing over Article 6, if you'd please so indicate by raising your white cards.
There was a question.
Okay, where is the question?
Kathy.
If this article is passed over, does that mean we won't be able to act on this for a whole nother year?
No, it doesn't mean that. It can mean if there was a special town meeting that came up or something, that it could be taken up at that point. That's what I understand. Noel?
Yeah, that's true, Kathy. I hate not to face everybody. So anyway, yeah, I just noticed that this wasn't underlined in the same way that Tony's article wasn't underlined. So I'm not sure we can act on it in the same way that you can't act on the other articles. So it would have to be a special town meeting or an annual town meeting in order to react to those articles.
Yes. Donna.
I'm on the warrant committee as well, and those articles were all underlined when we were approving them. What happened? Was it just a misunderstanding or an oversight? How come it didn't get done?
Does anyone want to address that?
Yep, my understanding was a clerical error in copying over from what was published and discussed at town meetings and what was put in the actual warrant. And what I also understand was when we consulted the town's attorney, they have said we have to skip over these articles because they're not consistent throughout the other forms of communication. At least that's my understanding.
Thank you for the question, Donna. Are there other questions? And I think, I apologize for Kathy, you're going to have to wave a lot to get my aged eyes here. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? If not, then I will call the motion to pass over on for a vote. All those in favor of passing over Article 6, if you would please so indicate by raising your white cards. Thank you. And opposed by raising your white cards? Yep. Okay, thank you. It's the opinion of the moderator that those voting in favor of the motion to pass over outnumber those against, and therefore Article 6 is passed over. Article 7, shall an ordinance dated May 4th, 2021 and entitled Amendments to the Land Use Zoning Ordinance to remove footnote 4 from some permitted uses in the Resource Protection District to be in conformance with shoreline zoning standards be enacted as set forth below. Is there a motion from the Warrant Committee?
There is. The warrant committee recommends passing over Article 7.
Moved and seconded by the Warrant Committee to recommend passing over Article 7. And Noel, did you wish to speak to this?
You know that microphone turns around.
How's that? Much better? Awesome. I'll figure it out by the end. So this one's a slightly different reason, but similar purpose, which is there was an error in the language of the question of this article, not necessarily the language in the actual text of the warrant of the changes. So in the question in the town report, in the warrant, it refers to the shoreline zoning or the resource protection standards, and it's really the stream protection standards. So again, we've been advised by the town's attorney that we need to pass this article over because the question isn't consistent with the actual change, even though we've already discussed all this and the actual language is what's, there's no changes to the language.
Thank you, Noel. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, we'll call the motion before us on Article 7 on for a vote. All those in favor of passing over Article 7, if you please so indicate by raising your white cards. Thank you. And those opposed by raising your white cards? And again, it's the opinion of the moderator that those voting in favor of the motion to pass over outnumber those voting against, and therefore Article 7 is passed over. Article 8, shall an ordinance dated May 4th, 2021 and entitled Amendments to Section 6A Lighting Outdoor be enacted as set forth below, and it references us to Appendix C. Is there a motion?
There is. The warrant committee would recommend passage of Article 8.
Moved and seconded by the warrant committee to recommend passage of Article 8. Any question or discussion? Hearing none, we'll call Article 8 on for a vote. All those in favor of the motion before us recommending passage, if you'd please so indicate by raising your white cards. Thank you. And those opposed by raising your white cards? It's the opinion of the moderator that those voting in favor of the motion outnumber those opposed, and therefore Article 8 so passes. Article 9, shall an ordinance dated May 4, 2021 and entitled Amendments to the Land Use Zoning Ordinance to clarify where the setback is measured from on a private road or right-of-way be enacted as set forth below, and they reference us to Appendix D attached to the warrant itself. Is there a motion?
There is. The warrant committee recommends passage of Article 9.
And second.
Thank you, Ryan. Moved and seconded by the warrant committee to recommend passage of Article 9. Question or discussion with regards to this article? Hearing none, we'll call Article 9 on for a vote. All those in favor of the motion before us recommending passage, if you'd please so indicate by raising your white cards. Thank you. And those opposed by raising your white cards. It's the opinion of the moderator that those voting in favor of the motion outnumber those opposed, and therefore the motion passes as so moved. Article 10, to see if the inhabitants of the town of Mount Desert will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to accept conditional gifts, unconditional gifts, equipment, proceeds from sale of fire equipment, or funds on behalf of the municipal fire department. It is understood any funds received will be placed in the fire equipment reserve fund. A motion?
Warrant committee recommends passage of Article 10.
And second.
Moved and seconded by the warrant committee to recommend passage of Article 10. Question, comment, or discussion? Hearing none, we'll call Article 10 on for a vote. All those in favor of the motion before us recommending passage, if you would please so indicate by raising your white card. Thank you. Those opposed by raising your white card. It's the opinion of the moderator that those voting in favor outnumber those opposed, and therefore the motion passes. Article 11, to see if the inhabitants of the town of Mount Desert will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to accept and expend on behalf of the town additional state, federal, and other funds, including unconditional gifts of money received during the fiscal year 2020 to 2021 for town purposes, provided that such additional funds do not require expenditure of local funds not previously appropriated. A motion?
Yes, the warrant committee recommends passage of Article 11.
And second?
Moved and seconded by the warrant committee to recommend passage of Article 11. Question, comment, or discussion? Yes, Kathy?
I think that should be 21, 22 in that article.
Yes, we're not normally allowed to amend an article, but it seems to me this is clearly a typographical error, and I would permit a motion to amend Article 11 to change it to fiscal year 2021 to 2022. Does anyone wish to make such a motion?
I'd move to amend Article 11 to read during the fiscal year 2021 to 2022 for town purposes.
And second.
And moved and seconded to amend that article to change it to 2021 to 2022. Question or discussion on the motion to amend? Hearing none, we'll call that on for a vote. All those in favor of the motion to amend Article 11 to reference fiscal year 2021 to 2022, if you'd so indicate by raising your white cards. Thank you. And those opposed? The motion to amend carries as those voting in favor outnumber those opposed. The main motion now is so amended. Any further discussion with regards to the main motion? Hearing none, I'll call all those in favor of Article 11 as so amended, if they would raise their white cards. Thank you. And those opposed, if you would raise your white cards. Moderator determines that those voting in favor of Article 11 as amended outnumber those opposed, and therefore Article 11 passes as amended. Article 12, to see if the inhabitants of the town of Mount Desert will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to lease a portion of the so-called visitor center at the Northeast Harbor Marina to the ticket booth operators for a term of 1 year beginning July 1, 2021, under such terms and conditions as the Board of Selectmen, in its sole discretion, deems to be in the best interests of the town. A motion?
Yes, the warrant committee moves passage of Article 12.
Second.
Moved and seconded by the warrant committee to recommend passage of Article 12. Question or discussion? Hearing none, we'll call Article 12 on for a vote. All those in favor of the motion before us to recommend passage of Article 12, if you please so indicate by raising your white cards. Thank you. All those opposed by raising your white card. It's the opinion of the moderator that those voting in favor of the motion outnumber those opposed, and therefore Article 12 passes as so moved. Article 13, to see if the inhabitants of the town of Mount Desert will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to lease a portion of the so-called visitor center at the Northeast Harbor Marina to the Mount Desert Chamber of Commerce for a term of 1 year beginning July 1, 2021, under such terms and conditions as the Board of Selectmen, in its sole discretion, deems to be in the best interests of the town.
The warrant committee recommends passage of Article 13.
Second.
Moved and seconded by the warrant committee to recommend passage of Article 13. Question, comment, or discussion? Hearing none, we'll call Article 13 on for a vote. All those in favor of the motion before us recommending passage, if you would please so indicate by raising your white card. Thank you. Those opposed by raising your white card. It's the moderator's opinion and determination that those voting in favor of the motion outnumber those opposed, and Article 13 therefore passes as so moved. Article 14, to see if the inhabitants of the town of Mount Desert will authorize the Board of Selectmen to negotiate and enter into an agreement with the Neighborhood House Club, Inc., for management and maintenance of the municipal swimming pool under such terms and conditions as the Board of Selectmen in its sole discretion deems to be in the best interests of the town.
Warrant committee recommends passage of Article 14.
And second.
Thank you. The warrant committee moves and seconds passage of Article 14. Question or discussion of the motion before us? Hearing none, we'll call this on for a vote. All those in favor of the motion before us, if you would please so indicate by raising your white cards. Thank you. Those opposed by raising your white cards. It's the moderator's determination that those voting in favor outnumber those opposed, and therefore Article 14 passes as so moved. Article 15, to see if the inhabitants of the town of Mount Desert will vote to approve July 1st each year as the date on which all taxes shall be due and payable, providing that all unpaid taxes on September 1st of each year shall be charged interest at an annual rate of 6% per year. Is there a motion?
Yeah, the warrant committee recommends passage of Article 15.
And second.
Moved and seconded by the warrant committee to recommend passage of Article 15. Question, comment, or discussion? Hearing none, we'll call that on for a vote. All those in favor of the motion before us to recommend passage of Article 15, if you would please so indicate by raising your white cards. Thank you. Those opposed? It's the opinion of the moderator that those voting in favor of the motion outnumber those opposed, and therefore Article 15 passes as so moved. Article 16, to see if the inhabitants of the town of Mount Desert will vote to authorize the tax collector to enter into a standard tax club agreement, and with unanimous consent of those of us here, if you would permit me to not read the rest of that particular article, I'd be happy to do so, but if not, I would call for a motion from the warrant committee on that.
The warrant committee moves passage of Article 16.
Second.
Moved and seconded by the warrant committee to recommend passage of Article 16. Is there a question or discussion with regards to that article? Hearing none, we'll call that on for a vote. All those in favor of the motion before us recommending passage of Article 16, if you would please so indicate by raising your white cards. Thank you. And those opposed by raising white cards. It's my determination as moderator that those voting in favor outnumber those opposed, and therefore Article 16 passes as so moved. Article 17, to see if the town will vote to authorize the tax collector to accept prepayment of property taxes not yet committed, not to exceed the estimated amount to be committed in 2021 with no interest to be paid on same.
The warrant committee moves passage of Article 17.
And second.
Moved and seconded by the warrant committee to recommend passage of Article 17. Question, comment, or discussion? Hearing none, we'll call Article 17 on for a vote. All those in favor of the motion before us, if you would please so indicate by raising your white cards. Thank you. And those opposed? It's the opinion of the moderator that those Voting in favor of Article 17, the motion before us recommending passage outnumber those opposed, and therefore Article 17 passes as so moved. Article 18, to see if the inhabitants of the town of Mount Desert will vote to set the interest rate to be paid by the town for abated taxes that have been paid at the rate of 3% per year.
The warrant committee moves passage of Article 18.
And second?
Moved and seconded by the warrant committee to recommend passage of Article 18. Are there questions or discussions with regard to this article? Hearing none, we'll call this article on for a vote. The motion before us is to recommend passage. All those in favor of that motion, if you would please so indicate by raising your white cards. Thank you. And those opposed, by raising your white cards. It's the moderator's determination that those voting in favor of the motion outnumber those opposed, and therefore Article 18 passes as so moved. Article 19, to see if the inhabitants of the town of Mount Desert will vote to authorize expenditures to pay any tax abatements granted by the assessor, Board of Assessment Review, or Board of Selectmen, together with any interest due thereon from the town during the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2021, in an aggregate amount not to exceed the property tax commitment overlay.
The warrant committee moves passage of Article 19.
And second?
Warrant Committee recommends passage of Article 19 and has seconded to put it before us for debate. Any question, comment? Hearing none, I'll call this on for a vote. All those in favor of the motion recommending passage of Article 19, if you would please so indicate by raising your white cards. And thank you. And those opposed, by raising your white cards. Thank you. It's the moderator's determination that those voting in favor of the motion before us on Article 19 number those opposed, and therefore Article 19 passes as so moved. Article 20, to see if the inhabitants of the town of Mount Desert will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to dispose by public bid of town-owned property other than real property with a value of $10,000 or less under such terms and conditions as it deems advisable.
The warrant committee recommends passage of Article 20.
And second?
Moved and seconded by the warrant committee to recommend passage of Article 20. Is there question or discussion with regards to this article? Hearing none, I'll call Article 20 on for a vote. All those in favor of the motion before us recommending passage, if you would please so indicate by raising your white cards. Thank you. And those opposed, by raising your white cards. Thank you. It's the opinion of the moderator that those voting in favor outnumber those opposed, and therefore Article 20 passes as so moved. Article 21, to see if the inhabitants of the town of Mount Desert will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to sell at public auction or by advertised sealed bid, and to convey titles obtained under tax deeds and under deeds of conveyance to the inhabitants of the town, any land and or buildings, including trailers, in lieu of payment of taxes, except that the Selectmen have the power to authorize redemption. Municipal officers shall use the special sale process required by 36 MRS Section 943C for qualifying homestead property if they choose to sell it to anyone other than the former owner.
Warrant committee recommends passage of Article 21.
And second.
Moved and seconded by the warrant committee to recommend passage of Article 21. Question or discussion? Hearing none, we'll call this on for a vote. All those in favor of the motion before us recommending passage of Article 21, if you would please raise your white cards. Thank you. And those opposed, if you would raise your white cards. It's the opinion of the moderator that those voting in favor of the motion outnumber those opposed, and therefore Article 21 passes as so moved. Article 22, to see if the inhabitants of the town of Mount Desert will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to contract for services in amounts not to exceed appropriation for same under such terms and conditions as it deems advisable.
The warrant committee recommends passage of Article 22.
And second.
Moved and seconded by the warrant committee to recommend passage of Article 22. Question or discussion with regards to same? Hearing none, we'll call Article 22 on for a vote. All those in favor of the motion before us recommending passage, if you please raise your white card. Thank you. And those opposed, if you would raise your white card. Thank you. It's my opinion that those voting in favor outnumber those opposed, and therefore Article 22 passes as so moved. Article 23, to see if the inhabitants of the town of Mount Desert will vote to transfer $500,000 from the undesignated fund balance to reduce the 2021-2022 tax commitment.
The warrant committee recommends passage of Article 23.
And second.
Moved and seconded by the warrant committee to recommend passage of Article 23. Question or discussion? Hearing none, we'll call Article 23 on for a vote. All those in favor of approving the motion which recommends passage of Article 23, if you please so indicate by raising your white cards. Thank you. Opposed? By raising your white cards. Thank you. It's the opinion of the moderator that those voting in favor of the motion before us recommending passage outnumber those opposed, and that therefore the motion has has carried. Article 24. Shall the voters of the town of Mount Desert authorize the town to appropriate an amount not to exceed $357,500 from the capital gains reserve account to pay for professional technical services associated with the design and bidding of the improvements to the Northeast Harbor Fire Station located at 21 C Street in the village of Northeast Harbor, with said improvements being made to accommodate anticipated staffing, storage, and equipment needs of the town's fire department and ambulance service, and with said improvements to include but not be limited to staff quarters, meeting and general purpose rooms, equipment, gear storage, and other fire, ambulance, and personnel needs identified during the design process, all as generally described and illustrated in the concept sketches located in Appendix E, Option 1, and Appendix E, Option 2, with reference to pages 49 and 54, sketches, and further to authorize the Board of Selectmen or its designee to execute any and all contracts and documents and to do all things necessary or convenient to accomplish the project. Is there a motion?
There is. The warrant committee recommends passage of Article 24.
And second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded by the warrant committee to recommend passage of Article 24. I would now entertain comments from people. Yes? Yep, please feel free.
James Bright. First, I owe the selectmen an apology. I could not make your Zoom meeting the other day. I recommend that we not pass this. It seems to me that we have not had enough in-depth study on where to place a fire station that would best cover the whole town. I don't think we should be stuck in Northeast Harbor, since most of the residents now live on the other side of the Sound. It would make more sense to build a brand new station that would be basically in the center of the town, instead of trying to squeeze something into a little finite space that we have now. I am not opposed to what's happening. I think we'll end up with a fire department that is hired and the EMS, but before we spend this money, let's have a study of where best to place it. We could also do I know there's talk already about doing a substation in Soamesville, when we could have one station. We may have to tear that building down and build something new, but the town also has land on Beach Hill. And it just seems like we're rushing into something without a really good study of where to put it. I do support the fire department and all that, but let's just back off a little bit. We were presented with a $10 million plan. Now we're down to a $5 million plan. And let's take our time and do it right and see if we can get one unit that will cover the whole town. Maybe we could also work a deal with Bar Harbor, since Otter Creek would be that far away, that they would cover Otter Creek in exchange for us covering some of their property on the other side of their town. So let's just slow down a little bit and get it right this time instead of whatever. Thank you.
Thank
So
you, Jim.
I encourage a nay vote, not to stop the fire department, but to just get this done right. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, since there seem to be a number of people who would like to speak, which is great, what I'd like to do is ask if there anyone who wants to speak in favor of the motion. to come forward, and if not, then I would then go, anybody else who wants to speak in opposition to the motion, please come forward. Yeah.
My name is John Adams, and I concur with Mr. Bright. He's made a very good point. I'm on the warrant committee, and I know it was first brought up with the fire chief, and he talked about the $2.5 million to maybe $3 million extension. And I said that I see the population increase happening in Pretty Marsh, Stonesville, Fall Quarry. Looking down the road, I think that's where our population is going to be. And that's where our emphasis should be, is in doing something in Soamesville rather than Northeast Harbor. I also disagreed with, as part of the $2.5 million, of adding a fourth bay onto the firehouse in Northeast Harbor to house, originally it was to house a pump truck that was going to be there from time to time. And now recently it's going to be for a fireboat to be used so that the firemen can go out on the water, I guess, eliminating the Coast Guard, and respond to fires. I think if you vote for this $375,000, you're really voting to commit basically to the $2.5 to $3 million, because that's all the study is for the firehouse in Northeast. I think there's a much simpler solution to it. One of the solutions I have, which I think is common sense, is take the public, where we have the selectmen's meeting and everything right in the building now, use that space for whatever additional space you need for housing, for fire, for bathrooms, showers, etc. And because I've talked to the neighborhood house, and the neighborhood house says they would be more than happy to have selectmen's meetings, planning board meetings, whatever we want for neighborhood meetings there instead of having it where it is now. And also, we could also have selectmen's meetings and planning board meetings in Soamesville. So I think we could use the space we already have in the town office for a lot less than $2.5 million.
Thank you, John.
So I'll ask everyone to vote nay on this.
Okay. Thank you. Wells? Sure.
I'd like to speak in favor of this motion. This is not a new concept. We've been talking about this for quite a while. And it would be nice if we had the time to talk about it for a much longer. But we're pretty much out of time. As Derlin Lunt said at a town meeting, I think 8 years ago or 10 years ago, we are slowly moving toward a hired fire department. People are not coming out and volunteering. The fire department is shrinking and getting older. There are very few people on the fire department who are much younger than me. And we have a lot of property to protect in this town. There's already been one proposal that's come up and voted against. This has been in discussion for quite a while. And I think we're going to find ourselves in serious trouble if we don't act and get this taken care of. We're taking a great chance with our first responders in not being able to do the job we asked them to do. And it's a very important job. I think we need to act on this. If we have to expand in Soamesville in the future, we can do that too. But it seems to me very short-sighted to talk about the amount of money we're spending, which is not that great when we're talking about a fire department. And we need to do something to keep our town protected. I suggest you vote in favor of this motion.
Thank you, Lance. Steve? Or, okay, yes.
I'm Ralph Erickson from Pretty Marsh, and I'm speaking against the motion. couple of different points that I'd like to bring up. I live over in Pretty Marsh. Right now, what's happening when emergency services need to come out, they need to drive all the way from Northeast Harbor. I'm in favor of placing some of the resources in Soamesville. This $357,000 would be spent with no thought toward that option. So we would be expanding in Northeast Harbor probably to a greater extent than we need to, if half the service is going to spend the night in Soamesville. If that's the future that we're looking at, why are we looking at putting such a lot of resources into the Northeast Harbor side? Another thing I'd like to bring up is that I don't believe that it's required that the emergency personnel reside in the same building as the equipment. We have other property in Northeast Harbor, for instance. The second floor of the museum could be looked at as a place to house these people, put in call rooms, a little kitchenette, bathrooms. I think that's what we're talking about. Or lease apartments. Why are we talking about $1.3 million to put a second floor on top of the fire facility to house, is it 2 people or 4 people for the night? I don't know. So it doesn't seem very well thought through to me. I don't understand why we're proceeding with a study when there's already, I think, some consensus that we ought to put half the service in Soamesville. Seems like we're jumping the gun to me. Maybe 8 years has gone on since we talked about that we need to do something, or what doesn't sound like we're doing the right thing. So I encourage people to vote no.
Thank you, Ralph. Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Yes.
Good evening. My name is Michael Panko, and my phone's ringing. Excuse me. I live also in Pretty Marsh, and I live on the Gray Farm Road. And while we don't have the concentration of people that they do in Northeast Harbor, we've had a lot of development in Pretty Marsh over the past decade. I know that on my road, the number of residencies has more than doubled just in the last 10 years. And a lot of these are year-round people. And while one of the previous speakers spoke about property, we're speaking about lives. And I think that the response time from the fire department to Pretty Marsh from Northeast Harbor is just too long. I had an incident in my own home a few years ago, and it was a long response time for the department when it came. I think that if we go ahead and move in this direction that's being proposed, that the money will be spent, and it'll be a long time. If it took 8 years to reach this decision, can you imagine how long it'll take to receive the adequate coverage that the people of Pretty Marsh and the west side of Mount Desert, including Soamesville and Hall Quarry, how long they'll have to wait? I think that this study should be expanded to include the entire town of Mount Desert. Maybe the study should also involve the town of Bar Harbor. Obviously, the geography of Bar Harbor, results in some of the same difficulties that we have. But I would not to move forward at this time, or to move forward with an expanded proposal that suits the needs of the entire village. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Yes, Chief Bender.
Good evening. I'll try to answer some of the questions that were asked earlier, if I can recall them all. But, 1st one is from Mr. Bright. one station in Mount Desert is not gonna cover the whole town, or that's not gonna cover it adequately. You have response times, and you also have what we call fire department presence credit. So as a homeowner, if you don't live within 5 miles, 5 travel miles of a fire department or a fire station, you won't get credit on your fire insurance for being, having a fire station near your house. So you're looking at possibly or most likely higher insurance rates if you decide to go with one central station in the middle of town. But what concerns me is the response time. When you're dealing with EMS, medical services, and fire department, time is of the essence. When you're dealing with a fire today, unlike 50 years ago, you have probably less than 5 minutes to get out of your house if it's on fire and still survive. EMS, well, minutes count. So we're looking at response times. If the town voters want one station and put it in the middle of the town and is willing to accept the people from Pretty Marsh waiting an extra 10 minutes, 15 minutes for response, or the people in Holly Creek, that's the way we go, that's fine. But we're doing this so we can hopefully cover the whole town, all the citizens and all the property within the town. Sonesville, Pretty Marsh, I heard a lot of concerns about that, and apparently it hasn't been in the paper or on the web enough, but originally when we started this idea about 2.5 years ago, my plan was to slowly turn the fire department into a 24/7 coverage. It was apparent to me that with the current trends, our volunteer force aging out, I wasn't going to be able to guarantee that we could provide the fire coverage, the fire service coverage that we have in the past. And as it's my responsibility to make sure that every citizen and property in this town has the proper coverage for fire, I felt it was time to do something. So I came up with a 10-year plan. I went before the board. I said, this is what I'd like to do within the next 10 years. Within 2 years, I would like to transition to a 24/7 fire department for the town. That plan, including making improvements to either Northeast Harbor Fire Station as it is, or building a new one so we can accommodate full-time firefighters. Since then, things have changed, and the Northeast Harbor Ambulance Service has come to the town and told us that after 2023, they will no longer be in existence. So about after January, February, March of 2023, you may not have an ambulance service in town. So we decided to, after a committee of a small number of people in town, we decided that the fire department should assume the role of EMS and take over the ambulance service for the town. When we did that, it became apparent that we probably should spread our coverage instead of just having everything in the Northeast. So since then, and I thought this was well publicized, but apparently hasn't, we have decided to continue with our improvements with Northeast Harbor. We have scaled it down. We're no longer looking to put 4 people in the Northeast Harbor Station. Originally, it was going to be 2 firefighters and 2 EMTs. Now we're going to propose putting 2 people in Northeast Harbor full-time and 2 people in the Sonesville Fire Station full-time. This will require renovations in the Sonesville Fire Station. Right now, there's no facilities for 24/7 staffing up there as well. But we will have 2 firefighter EMTs in Northeast and 2 firefighter EMTs in Sonesville. They'll be there 24/7, and they'll be able to cover the emergencies in Mount Desert. The 4th bay. We are proposed to make expansions and renovations in the Northeast Harbor Fire Station. The Seal Harbor Fire Station, the future of that is questionable. So I was asking for the flexibility to have a 4th bay in the Northeast Harbor Fire Station so we could move trucks around. We haven't ironed out all the plans yet. I've been talking with Bar Harbor about some possible form of collaboration, but that's down the road. But if that should happen, we need to look at maybe moving our tanker truck, which is now in Sonesville, down to Northeast Harbor. Or we may be moving a truck in Seal Harbor over to Northeast Harbor. Right now, we have 3 bays and they're full. We have no room for for moving anything around. So that's why we're proposing the fourth bay in Northeast, but also it will allow us to have a full second story on top of there, which will give us room for bunk rooms, kitchen, day room, storage, and offices. So this is good, another reason why we like to expand the first floor. Yeah, was there any other questions I missed, or? So again, just to recap, we are looking to do Somerville. It's in the works right now. We actually are working with an architect right now to come up with some concept plans. That has been privately funded for that study, so there's no taxpayer dollars in that. And we hope to move forward with that project roughly about the same time as the Northeast Harbor project. Let me stay here in case there's more questions or concerns.
Hello there. So, a bunch of years ago, I was a volunteer fireman, and I was a fireman for about 10 years. Most of that time I spent fighting fires as part of the Otter Creek Fire Company. Okay, and for those of you that remember the village fire departments, sometimes it took Otter Creek a while to get to fires in Otter Creek. But, you know, we had 8 bays, and we had a varying amount of equipment from one year to the next. We didn't have a ladder truck, for example. We certainly didn't have a boat. So over the years, we decided we're going to get rid of these village departments, and we're going to have a town department. We're going to have a municipal fire department. You know, we were making promises of mutual aid to our neighbors that we were really having trouble filling, okay? They were already going, some of them already going to full-time departments, or certainly farther along the road than we were. And so we hired a full-time fire chief, first full-time fire personnel that the town had at the time. I think his name was Merrill. Can't remember his last name. And after Merrill, there was a second chief full-time. And we hired, I believe, our first time full-time firefighter around that time. And still, we had these little outpost falling down buildings. Some of them were I mean, the Otter Creek Fire Company had a Ford F500 parked in a single garage. Seal Harbor has, and still has, a fire building with 2 bays. Somesville has a couple of bays, 2 or 3 bays. And Northeast Harbor has a couple of bays, okay? So the discussion aside as to how many bays we need, I think that would be a foolish discussion to have, because we don't know what we're going to need for equipment going forward. We don't know what those requirements are going to be, and I certainly don't have the skill set you need to make a cogent argument one way or another as to whether or not we need a boat, or we need a ladder truck, or we need 2 pumpers, or 3 pumpers, or a tanker. There's a lot of different kinds of equipment out there. I would hate to go through this project and cheap ourselves out of the bay or 2 that we really needed to do what we needed to do. And oh, sorry, it's too late. Now we have to retrofit. So getting back to the outpost village fire departments. So we still really, that's what we're dealing with today. We have the Northeast Harbor Station, which hasn't really changed appreciably over the years. Otter Creek no longer exists. The Seal Harbor Station is still there. It has its 2 bays. And we have Stonesville. So, and I'm not going to talk about the property valuation. That's a tiresome discussion because we all know what our property valuation is. And we're still making the same promises of mutual aid to our neighbors. Okay? But we're living 20 years ago right now. And the guys that we have currently, some of them are sitting right here, have done a great job, but boy, we're thin on the ground. Okay? And we need to support this effort. And also understand that the original plan was to build in Northeast Harbor. And a lot of people had trouble with the concept that we were going to have a centralized station right in Northeast Harbor, which is pretty far away from Otter Creek, pretty far away from Hall Quarry, which is fairly close to Southwest, but that's not an issue. and Soamesville, Pretty Marsh in particular. Then we came up with a plan to fund an engineering study for the Soamesville station as well, so that we would in fact have two foci of permanent fire presence, public safety presence, one in Soamesville and one in Northeast Harbor. Unfortunately, I don't know if this has been mentioned, but that engineering plan was not done in time to make it onto the warrant. Okay? It is, however, still part of the plan. And that plan involves the study that looked at where all the calls are, where all those alarms are, where the public safety threats have been shown to be over the last however many years. Okay? So I would strongly recommend that we at least fund the engineering and design of the beginning of this project in Northeast Harbor. We may very well have a special town meeting coming up where we discuss the engineering costs of doing Soamesville, which makes a lot of sense to me anyway. We'll leave it up to you.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Bright. Is there anyone else who wants to speak, by the way, just so I'm... Okay. Again, I agree with what's needed at the fire department. I just don't think we need a great big new station in Northeast if most of our population and calls go to Pretty Marsh. Let's look at building something larger there and maybe making Northeast the substation. Let's get away from, well, this is the way it's always been, we've always been in Northeast. We need to protect both sides of our town, and I think we can do it with a better station and then make Northeast the substation. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. McFarland? Chapin, did you want to speak? Or?
I think Chief was looking to answer that question there.
Oh, okay. I saw your hand up, though, I thought so. Good. We're proposing keeping the major presence in Northeast Harbor because I can't speak for EMS calls because I haven't been involved in those. But as far as fire calls goes, we average about 200 to 225 fire calls a year. 50% of those, well over 100 of those fire calls are in the village of Northeast Harbor. I've been doing this for over 35 years. I started as a volunteer with the Cedar Harbor Fire Department, eventually moved into a full-time chief. And we're making these decisions that are data-driven. Majority of our calls in Northeast, it just makes sense to put your resources next to where you're going to be going to most of your calls. But we also realize that the town is expanding and growing over in Soamesville, and it's a long travel distance to Soamesville too. So we're proposing to put staff there too as well. But it's the decision to maintain a presence in Northeast and have that as our main station, if you will. It's just not something we dreamed up, or we just don't want to stay there because we like it. Majority of our calls are there, and it just doesn't make sense to put all your fire trucks and all your people 15 miles away and have them run into Northeast Harbor once, maybe twice a day with these fire calls. So, thank you. Mr. Adams? Okay, just to say, I'll call on John, and if you have a question, John, I think.
I just want to reiterate again, I don't think it needs to cost $2.5 to $3 million to house, what did you say, 2 people? That you're going to have 2 people full-time. What's the cost-benefit ratio of that? Someone brought up to me the other day. We're spending $2.5 to $3 million to house 2 people. Just think about that. And again, I think the emphasis ought to be in Soamesville, and that's really where the growth of this town's going to be. If you really want to look 5 years, 10 years down the road, it's not going to be in Northeast Harbor. And by the way, the calls that we have in Northeast Harbor, I think we had over 200 last year, they were mainly false alarms. I believe most all of them were false alarms. Somebody setting off an alarm system in a house. And that ought to be talked about at some point too. Because I think if you have a fire alarm that goes off in your house and it's a mistake, there's no charge. But if it happens 2 and 3 times, I think we ought to start charging people for having alarm systems that cause the fire department to run out with equipment to a house that has no fire. So again, I think it's a waste of money to spend this $357,000 for just what we're going to do in Northeast Harbor. We don't need to spend $2.5 million to house 2 people. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jim, excuse me, I think you had a question for the chief, did you? Or?
No, I was just gonna ask how many were false alarms in Northeast Harbor.
Okay, so yeah, the question was about false alarms, and then I'll get to the other Mr. McFarland.
Yeah, the question is how many false alarms we have in Northeast Harbor. I don't have the exact numbers. I can tell you of all the fire calls we go town-wise, about 50% are false alarms. But I just want to remind everybody that when the buzzer goes off, the pager goes off, we don't know it's a false alarm. We treat every call as it's a real emergency until we get on scene and make sure everything is safe. I can tell you by past practices, the town used to treat false alarms like false alarms and send other than fire units to check these out. But we learned a long time ago that when you arrive on scene in a police vehicle and the house is on fire, you're not much good. And then you lose time calling the fire department to come out. So yeah, they're false alarms. Nothing we can do about it, but we treat them like real calls. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott?
Been a while since I've been here. Scott McFarland, and I've been listening to a lot of the dialogue, and you know, have a great deal of respect for Jimmy and John and everyone else that's looking to do. I think everyone wants to do the right thing. I think what the beauty of a town meeting is the time for you to get, you know, you get really the facts and the information squared away, instead of just hearing what different people are saying about it. And that's why it's so important to be here and then be able to vote on something, but also to get all the facts. I admit, when I first started hearing about this sitting in my car, being a member of, being a resident of Pretty Marsh, I, along with Ralph and Mike and stuff, thought, geez, you know, what about us? And I didn't know that you're funding, or you're having private funding, you know, to be able to have full-time personnel in Sonesville. I think that's, in my mind, huge. The one thing I don't know is I don't know everything about it. None of us know everything about it. And we can't come in here and pretend that we do know everything about it. I think what we have to do is depend on the people that have put a lot of time and energy into trying to figure this all out, because they're all good people. I don't think anybody wants to do anybody wrong, you know, so, you know, Northeast versus Sonesville, I think, you know, it makes me feel good that it makes common sense to me that you boost your Sonesville presence, and you also have Northeast Harbor presence. To me, that provides a lot better coverage for everyone, rather than one central station somewhere that is not going to really do everyone particularly good. So I'm going to support this, because I really trust that people have put a lot of time and energy into this, trying to come up with, I think, their best plan. Be it perfect or not, I don't think it's probably perfect. All I know is everyone is putting good faith in this, and I think we ought to trust them that they have done the right thing. So, thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
Scott actually said some of the things that I also agreed. When I joined the select board a few years ago, this was already in the discussion. It took me a while to really get there, because I too have financial concerns. I'm a taxpayer in this community, and I bust my butt to be able to have my home. But I'm also grateful for the EMS and the fire department. And so I have been torn in very separate directions over the last year or so. But as I've learned and listened and respected the people that are the professionals, and if you think about what this says, is that we are asking for the professionals to help us make this decision. I consider Mike a professional. I consider Chapin a professional. I consider the EMTs professionals. I'm a professional at my job, but none of us, I believe, are technical professionals to be able to tell us what is right and what is wrong as far as what our community needs. And I think that's what this warrant article is asking us to do, to make sure we do it right. Some of the things I heard was take the time to do it right. I agree. I think that's what we're doing, is we're trying to take the time and get the information from the correct people to do this right. I agree, to house 2 people, and that's a large amount of money. But from what I understand in listening and reading, there's a lot more to this than just housing 2 people. Huge amount. I think that's a small portion of what's important for our community as we move forward for 24-hour coverage. It's not a new concept. 10 years, we've been talking about changes in our EMS and emergency services for many years. And expanding the study, I think that's also what we're trying to do. So I think we're kind of all on the same page here, and we want to do it right. But we also need to remember that we cannot go without our fire department and our EMS. And I think Chief Bender said it the best in the forum, which is very unfortunate for people that couldn't attend, that if we don't do something now, then when we do need an ambulance, when we do need a firefighter, they might not be there for us. And so, I just truly believe that we need to support our ambulance and our EMS moving forward to make the best decision we can for our town and our community.
Thank you. Ralph? And then is there anyone else? Because then I'd like to sort of focus and take a vote here.
Yeah, so what we're saying here is that we have a proposal before us. If you read the warrant article, the warrant article talks about strictly putting another bay into the existing station in Northeast Harbor and building on top of that for, I thought it was $1.3 million, but it's more than that apparently, to house 2 people. And everybody up here is already agreeing that that's more than we need, because we're gonna move half of it to Somerville anyway. So I don't understand how we're gonna spend $357,000 to draw up plans to do something that we know we don't need already. Rent an apartment. Put these 2 people in separate apartments. Housing does not need to be in the same building as the equipment. Right now, or recently in the past, we've had people who are volunteer firefighters who drive from their homes to the station, get in the truck, and go to the scene. That's not different if somebody is a professional firefighter staying in an apartment downtown. They have the same response time. So I think this is a flawed plan, and I think we're throwing money away.
Thank you. Yes, Chief.
Hello, Jay McFarland, full-time firefighter. I'd like to answer your comments about having someone housed not at a station. If you're going to be paying for a 24/7 full-time fire department, you should be paying for them to be there and getting career service. Seconds matter. You shouldn't be waiting for someone to respond from a department if you're paying them to be on duty. Also, in NFPA 1710, Section 4, it states that for a career fire department, it should take between 60 and 80 seconds to respond to the call. If you have someone housed away from the equipment, they cannot respond in 60 to 80 seconds. It's just a waste, so, my sense.
Thank you. Yes, John?
Again, I want to bring up the point that we could use right in the town office, the space we use now for selectmen, planning board meetings, and that space, all you need to do, we're only housing 2 people. And I don't want to spend this $300 and some thousand to do, which is designed to do the $2.5 million project. That's all it's designed to do. The other thing that's available that I found out recently, there's a condo that could be available right across the street from the fire department that could be rented for probably $2,400 a month that has at least 2 bedrooms in it and 2 bathrooms. So again, I think we need to be smart about this. You know, let's not forget what the $4.5 million beautification of the village in Northeast Harbor was allocated, and look what has become of it. We've got 3 big electrical poles in the street. We did widen the sidewalk, and that's all we've done. Right now, we have pools of water that go up in front of the post office, in front of the Kimball Lane.
Excuse me, John, I'd kind of like just to keep focused on this.
Well, I just want to focus on the fact that decisions are made, big decisions, and then what the results are. And I don't want that kind of thing happening with the fire department and what we need to do with the fire department. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll call Wells, and then after that, unless anybody really wants to speak, we'll call us on for a vote.
So I just heard a couple of things in this discussion that I'd like to comment on. One is repeatedly I've heard $2 million to house 2 people. The plan isn't just to house 2 people. The town now has to take over the ambulance service, and we need more garage storage. We need another bay. And I'd like to point out that when you're building this stuff, there's a lot of regulations about what has to happen in these buildings. If you want to house full-time firefighters and you rent a condominium, you're going to have to make sure that that condominium meets all the regulations that's required to house firefighters. The key thing is, in housing firefighters, the purpose of it is to cut down on the time it takes to get to a fire. Seconds count, as Chapin said, and if you have an alarm come in and somebody's in another building and they've got to shovel themselves out of that building and get over to the fire station before they get into the truck, you're using up a lot of those seconds. And I think I was struck by the fact that one of you gentlemen mentioned the $4 million we spent on beautifying the center of Northeast Harbor. I'd just like you to think about the relative importance of what we're doing here. We're trying to protect people and property from damage. We're not trying to beautify. And we're talking about spending half of what the town decided they should spend on beautifying the center of Northeast Harbor. I think we need to get our priorities straight. We need to act. We don't have any time left to talk about this. The fact is that a couple of years from now, if we haven't done what we're talking about, people are going to have fires and no one's going to show up. We need to do this.
I think, are we done, Jim? All right, then quickly, and then I'll call us for vote. Well, actually, I don't think you can move the question right after you speak.
Well, I was gonna move
Again, I'm all in favor of the fire department, and I can see where we're going, and it needs to be done. But this is for building a bigger station in Northeast, when I think we should seriously look at putting the main station in Solmesville and have a substation in Northeast. I think it would be cheaper in the long run, and if this was so well planned and thought out, which I think it probably was, why is the plan to do the substation in Solmesville not ready and not ready to look at in the entirety? That's all I'm saying. Let's look at it all at once. We're approving spending money that we may not have to spend. Thank you.
Then, unless there's any objection, I'll call this on for a vote. We're gonna do this by a hand count, because we obviously have people who have feelings on either side of the issue. What I'd like you to do is, if you are in front here or behind me, then Jen here will be counting your white cards. And you should take your cue from her as to whether you should keep them up or when you can put them down. Where Lydia is standing by the vehicles, from her out towards the driveway to the high school, she's gonna be counting everybody in a vehicle who's holding up a white card. And everybody behind her out towards the ball fields, Carrie's gonna be counting the white cards. So with that, I would say all those in favor of the motion before us, which is a motion to recommend passage of Article 24, if you would please raise your white cards. All those opposed, if you would raise your white cards. So the vote as tabulated is in favor 46, opposed 18. So the motion as moved so carries. Article 25, to see what sum the inhabitants of the town of Mount Desert will vote to raise and or appropriate as revenue through excise taxes, service fees, and miscellaneous sources for the 2021-2022 town budget. Is there a motion?
There is. The warrant committee recommends passage of recommends passage of the figure $1,239,983.
And second.
Moved and seconded by the warrant committee, the figure as printed in the warrant that the warrant committee recommends. That's the figure of $1,239,943. That is before us now for a debate and question, and I guess the question I have is the discrepancy between the Board of Selectmen's recommendation and that of the warrant committee, is that related to what we voted on in Article 23? And I don't know if somebody would address that. Yes, Sterling.
Total revenues is the $1,739,943. You already in Article 23 voted 500,000. This is the only article where we split the revenues, or we split the article, the amount for the article over two articles. So you've already raised the 500,000, so all you have to do is raise the 1,239,943.
Thank you very much, Sterling. Any question or discussion? Hearing none, we'll call Article 25 on for a vote. And again, the figure we're voting on is the one printed in the warrant as the recommendation of the warrant committee. All those in favor, if you'd please so indicate by raising your white cards. Thank you. And those opposed? It's the opinion of the moderator that those voting in favor outnumber those voting opposed. Article 26, and with unanimous consent, I'll dispense with reading some of these longer articles. Article 26, to see what sum the inhabitants of the town of Mount Desert will vote to raise and appropriate for Department 200 to 221, General Government. Is there a motion from the warrant committee?
There is. The warrant committee recommends a figure of $1,478,898.
For $989.
I'll wear my glasses.
All right.
And second.
Moved and seconded by the warrant committee. The figure is printed in the warrant. Question or discussion with regards to the motion before us on Article 26? Hearing none, we'll call that on for a vote. All those in favor of approving Article 26 that the figure is printed in the warrant, if you please so indicate by raising your white cards. Thank you. Those opposed by raising your white cards. It's the opinion of the moderator that those voting in favor of the motion outnumber those voting against it, therefore it carries. Article 27, to see what sum the inhabitants of the town of Mount Desert will vote to raise and appropriate for Department 300, General Assistance. Is there a motion?
There is. The warrant committee recommends a figure of $5,000.
And second.
Moved and seconded by the warrant committee, the figure of $5,000. Question or discussion? Hearing none, we'll call it on for a vote. All those in favor of the motion before us recommending $5,000 for Article 27, if you'd please indicate by raising your white cards. Thank you. Those opposed? It's my opinion that those voting in favor of the motion outnumber those opposed. Article 28, to see what sum the inhabitants of the town of Mount Desert will vote to raise and appropriate for Department 350, Rural Wastewater Support. Is there a motion?
Indeed. The warrant committee recommends a figure of $198,529.
And second.
Moved and seconded to recommend the figure is printed in the warrant of $198,529. Question or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, if you please so indicate by raising your white cards. Thank you. Those opposed? It's the opinion of the moderator. Those voting in favor outnumber those opposed. Therefore, Article 28 passes as so moved. Article 29, to see what sum the inhabitants of the town of Mount Desert will vote to raise and appropriate for Department 406 streetlights. Is there a motion?
There is. Except there was a sleep at the wheel there for a minute. I'm sorry. The warrant committee recommends a figure of $25,750,000.
And second.
Moved and seconded by the warrant committee. The figure is printed in the warrant. Is there question or discussion? Hearing none, we'll call that on for a vote. All those in favor of the motion before us to recommend passage of Article 29 at the figure of $25,750, if you'd please so indicate by raising your white cards. Thank you. Opposed? By raising your white cards. Those voting in favor outnumber those opposed, and therefore Article 29 passes as so moved. Article 30, to see what sum the inhabitants of the town of Mount Desert will vote to raise and appropriate for Department 401 and 408, Public Safety, Police, and Communications.
warrant committee recommends a figure of $1,281,884.00.
And second.
Thank you. And now before us for discussion is a motion to recommend the figure is printed in the warrant. Is there discussion, question, comment? Hearing none, we'll call Article 30 on for a vote. And again, the motion before us is to approve that article at $1,281,884. All those in favor, if you please so indicate by raising your white cards. Thank you. Those opposed by raising your white cards. It's the opinion of the moderator, those voting in favor outnumber those opposed, and therefore the motion carries. Article 31, to see what sum the inhabitants of the town of Mount Desert will vote to raise and appropriate for Department 403, 404, and 409, Public Safety, Fire Department, Hydrants, and Emergency Management. Is there a motion?
Yes, the warrant committee recommends passage of Article 31 in the amount of $985,583.00.
Second.
Moved and seconded to recommend passage of Article 31 at the figure is printed in the warrant. Question or discussion? Hearing none, we'll call Article 31 on for a vote. All those in favor of passing Article 31 at the figure is printed in the warrant, if you'd please so indicate by raising your white cards. Thank you. And those opposed, by raising your white cards. It's my opinion those voting in favor of the motion outnumber those opposed, and therefore Article 31 carries as so moved. Article 32, to see what sum the inhabitants of the town of Mount Desert will vote to raise and appropriate for Department 501, Public Works, Roads, Waste Management, Buildings and Grounds, etc., as set forth. Is there a motion?
There is. The warrant committee recommends passage of Article 32 in the amount of $2,729,726.
And second.
Moved and seconded by the warrant committee. The figure is printed in the warrant. Is there a question or discussion? Hearing none, we'll call Article 32 on for a vote. All those in favor of approving Article 32 at the figure is printed in the warrant, if you would please so indicate by raising your white cards. Thank you. And those opposed by raising your white cards. It's my opinion those voting in favor outnumber those opposed, and therefore the motion is moved, so carries. Article 33, to see what sum the inhabitants of the town of Mount Desert will vote to raise and appropriate for Department 505 and 506, sewer and wastewater treatment. Is there a motion?
Yes, the warrant committee recommends passage of Article 33 in the amount of $1,038,454.
And second.
Moved and seconded by the warrant committee. The figure is printed in the warrant. Question or discussion? Hearing none, we'll call this on for a vote. All those in favor of the motion before us on Article 33, if you would please so indicate by raising your white cards. Thank you. And those opposed by raising your white cards. It's my opinion those voting in favor outnumber those opposed, and therefore Article 33 so passes. Article 34, to see what sum the inhabitants of the town of Mount Desert will vote to raise and appropriate for Department 605 Recreation. Is there a motion?
There is. The warrant committee recommends passage of Article 34 in the amount of $5,900.
And second.
Moved and seconded by the warrant committee to recommend passage of Article 34 as printed in the warrant of $5,900. Question or discussion? Hearing none, we'll call that on for a vote. All those in favor of the motion before us in Article 34, if you please so indicate by raising your white cards. Thank you. And those opposed by raising your white cards. It's the opinion of the moderator that those voting in favor outnumber those opposed, and the motion carries as so moved. Article 35, to see what sum the inhabitants of the town of Mount Desert will vote to raise and appropriate for Department 701 Economic Community Development.
The warrant committee recommends passage of Article 35 in the amount of $10,000.
And second.
Moved and seconded by the warrant committee. The figure is printed in the warrant. Question or discussion? Hearing none, we'll call Article 35 on for a vote. All those in favor of approving Article 35 at the sum of $10,000, if you'd indicate by raising your white card. Thank you. And those opposed by raising your white card. Motion carries as so moved to $10,000. Article 36, to see what sum the inhabitants of the town of Mount Desert will vote to raise and appropriate for Department 801 debt service. Is there a motion?
Yes, the warrant committee recommends passage of Article 36 in the amount of $1,863,884. And second?
Moved and seconded by the warrant committee to recommend the figure is printed in the warrant. Any question or discussion with regards to the motion? Hearing none, we'll call this on for a vote. All those in favor of the motion before us to recommend Article 36 that the figure is printed in the warrant, if you would please so indicate by raising your white cards. Thank you. And those opposed? It's the opinion of the moderator. Those voting in favor predominate, and therefore Article 36 passes as so moved. Article 37, to see what sum the inhabitants of the town of Mount Desert will vote to raise and appropriate for Department 851, libraries, village improvement societies, etc. Is there a motion?
Yes, the warrant committee recommends passage of Article 37 in the amount of $331,847.
And second.
Moved and seconded, the figure is printed in the warrant. Any question or discussion with regards to the motion before us on Article 37? Hearing none, we'll call that on for a vote. All those voting in favor of the motion before us, if you please indicate by raising your white cards. Thank you. And those opposed by raising your white cards. The opinion of the moderator, those voting in favor predominate, and therefore Article 37 passes as so moved. Article 38, to see what sum the inhabitants of the town will vote to raise and appropriate for Department 991 capital improvement plan transfers.
The warrant committee recommends passage of Article 38 in the amount of $613,607.
And second.
Moved and seconded by the warrant committee to recommend passage that the figure is printed in the warrant of $613,607. Question or discussion? Hearing none, we'll call that on for a vote. All those in favor of the motion before us, if you would please so indicate by raising your white cards. Thank you. And those opposed? It's my opinion that those voting in favor predominate, and the article passes as so moved. Article 39. Is there a motion?
Yes, the warrant committee moves passing over Article 39.
This is our last Passover article, right? It moved and warned and seconded by the warrant committee to pass over Article 39, and that's, Kyle, because we don't need to approve the additional amount. Thank you. Question or discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion to pass over Article 39, if you please so indicate by raising your white card. Thank you. And those opposed by raising your white card. Thank you. It's my opinion those voting in favor predominate, and therefore the article is passed over. Article 40, to see if the inhabitants of the town of Mount Desert will vote to ratify the Board of Selectmen's approval of the Marine Proprietary Fund budget. In this case, the warrant committee makes a recommendation, but I would ask them if they would indulge me and make a motion recommending ratification.
The warrant committee moves ratification of Article 40.
And second.
Moved and seconded by the warrant committee at my request to recommend, in a positive sense, the ratification. Question or discussion? Hearing none, we'll call this on for a vote. All those in favor of Article 40 recommending ratification, if you please raise your white cards. Thank you. Those opposed? It's my opinion that those voting in favor predominate, and Article 40 passes. Articles 41, to see what sum the school board will be authorized to expend for regular instruction for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2021 and ending June 30, 2022. And with unanimous consent, as I read through these others, I'll eliminate the reference to the fiscal year. Is there a motion with respect to Article 41?
There is. The warrant committee recommends passage of Article 41 with a figure of $2,084,751.
And second.
Moved and seconded by the warrant committee. The figure is printed in the warrant, which is also the one is recommended by the school board. Question or discussion? Hearing none, we'll call Article 41 on for a vote. All those in favor of Article 41 as so moved, if you'd indicate by raising your white cards. Thank you. And those opposed? It's my opinion that those voting in favor of Article 41 predominate, and Article 41 so passes. Article 42, to see what sum the school board will be authorized to expend for special education. Is there a motion?
There is. The warrant committee recommends the figure of $769,150.
And second.
Moved and seconded by the warrant committee. The figure is printed in the warrant. Question or discussion? Hearing none, we'll call this on for a vote. All those in favor of the motion before us, which is to recommend passage of Article 42 at $769,150, if you'd indicate by raising your white card. Thank you. And all those opposed by raising your white cards? It's my opinion that those voting in favor predominate, and therefore Article 42 so passes. Article 43, to see what sum the school board will be authorized to expend for career and technical education.
The warrant committee recommends a figure of nothing. Zero.
And second.
You're recommending something, but it's nothing, right?
Not much.
Okay. Thank you. Moved and seconded by the warrant committee to recommend the figure of 0 in Article 43. Question or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, if you'd indicate by raising your white cards. Thank you. And those opposed by raising your white cards. It's my opinion that those voting in favor predominate, and Article 43 passes at nothing. Article 44, is there a motion?
There it is. The warrant committee recommends a figure of $86,651 for Article 44.
And second.
Moved and seconded by the warrant committee, the figure as printed in the warrant. Question or discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote. And again, the motion before us is recommending $86,651. All those in favor, if you please raise your white card. Thank you. And those opposed? Those voting in favor predominate, and Article 44 passes as so moved. Article 45, to see what sum the school board will be authorized to expend for student and staff support. Is there a motion?
There is. The warrant committee recommends a figure of $504,364.
And second.
Moved and seconded to recommend the figure as printed in the warrant is recommended by the school board and the warrant committee. Question or discussion? Hearing none, we'll call this on for a vote. All those in favor of the motion before us, if you'd indicate by raising your white cards. Thank you. And those opposed? It's my opinion that those voting in favor predominate, and Article 45 so passes. Article 46, to see what sum the school board will be authorized to expend for system administration for the fiscal year.
The warrant committee recommends a figure of $105,000.
And second.
Moved and seconded, the figure is printed in the warrant. Question or discussion? Hearing none, we'll call that on for a vote. All those in favor of the motion before us to recommend passage of $105,000, if you'd please so indicate by raising your white cards. Thank you. And those opposed? Those voting in favor predominate, in my opinion, and therefore Article 46 carries as so moved. Article 47, to see what sum the school board will be authorized to expend for school administration.
The warrant committee recommends a figure of $263,224.
And second.
Moved and seconded, the figure is printed in the warrant. Question or discussion? Hearing none, we'll call this on for a vote. All those in favor, if you please so indicate by raising your white cards. Thank you. And those opposed by raising your white cards. Those voting in favor predominate, and Article 47 passes as so moved. Article 48, to see what sum the school board will be authorized to expend for transportation and buses.
The warrant committee recommends a figure of $207,571.
And second.
Moved and seconded, the figure as printed in the warrant. Question or discussion? Yes, Carmen.
Thanks, Bill. I just was wondering, did, Masters at Elementary School, did they purchase College?
Great.
And my question is, has anybody been looking into possibly going to smaller size buses? I see an awful lot of our large buses, very, very few students on board.
Okay, and then Carmen, then I will take you. So Superintendent Gauss is here. Hi, Mark.
Good evening, thanks for the question. And yes, we are looking at transportation across the board throughout the district. And we're one of the first orders of business with the position that we've brought forth with operations and logistics and management is to undertake transportation study, undertake looking at routing software, and specific to your question, with some of the monies that we've been able to utilize, federal monies for COVID relief, we've purchased some smaller vans. You can see there's a smaller bus over there for the high school. So we are actively looking at that possibility. And I'm pleased to report we're also looking at sustainability. We're one of the first schools in the state that will have an electric bus. So we are actively looking at those pieces. One of the challenges we have, as you well know, is our organization, and our transportation is literally done 8 times over in all of our different schools. So we are working hard towards making sure we're more efficient, and that's one of our top priorities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. If you could stay here just for a second, I want to see if Carmen's question.
Well, my question was, did Mount Desert Elementary School purchase smaller vans? And I was just wondering if in fact so, what was the increase, for school board for 2007 when it was 2001 last year?
So, I'm sorry. Yes, we can speak to that. I can say too, first and foremost, that we're not allowed with any COVID or federal relief funds to supplant any of our items that we would know known costs. So, Gloria or Nancy, can you speak specifically to the increase which was not related to COVID relief funds? Can you address that piece, please? Nance? Okay. Yeah, you're gonna have to come up here. Thank you. It's good exercise. Keep you warm.
The major increase between the 2 years was salary and benefits. And there's a small increase in staff travel also, but mainly it's just personnel.
Thank you, and thank you, Carmen, for the question. Thank you, Mark. Any other questions with regards to Article 48? Hearing none, we'll call that on for a vote. All those in favor of the motion before us, which is to recommend approval of Article 48 as the figure is printed in the warrant, if you'd please so indicate by raising your white cards. Thank you. And those opposed by raising your white cards. It's my opinion that those voting in favor predominate, therefore Article 48 passes as so moved. Article 49, to see what sum the school board would be authorized to expend for facilities maintenance.
The warrant committee recommends a figure of $585,847.
And second.
Moved and seconded by the warrant committee. The figure is printed in the warrant. Question or discussion? Hearing none, we'll call Article 49 on for a vote. All those in favor of approving Article 49 is so moved, if you'd raise your white card. Thank you. Those opposed, if you'd raise your white card. It's my opinion that those voting in favor predominate and Article 49 passes as so moved. Article 50, to see what sum the school board will be authorized to expend for debt service. Is there a motion?
There is. The warrant committee recommends a figure of $301,397.
And second.
Moved and seconded by the warrant committee. The figure is printed in the warrant. Question or discussion? Hearing none, we'll call Article 50 on for a vote. All those in favor of the motion before us, if you'd indicate by raising your white cards. Thank you. And those opposed by raising your white cards. It's my opinion those voting in favor predominate, and therefore Article 50 passes as so moved. Article 51, to see what sum the school board will be authorized to expend for all other expenditures.
The warrant committee recommends passage of Article 51 in the amount of $75,000.
And second.
Moved and seconded. The figure is printed in the warrant. Question or discussion? Hearing none, therefore I'll call this on for a vote. All those in favor of approving Article 51 is so moved, if you'd raise your white cards. Thank you. And those opposed, if you'd raise your white cards. Again, those voting in favor predominate. Article 51 so passes. Now we have, and we'll end with a series of hand counts. And I think what we'll do is we'll divide up the way we did before. I'll just give people a chance to assume their stations there. Article 52, and with unanimous consent, I'll forego reading the full text of these articles. Article 52, to see what sum the voters of the town of Mount Desert will appropriate for the total cost of funding public education from kindergarten to grade 12. Is there a motion?
There is indeed. The warrant committee would recommend a figure of $1,806,548.
And second.
Moved and seconded by the warrant committee, the figure of $1,806,548. Question or discussion? Hearing none, we'll call this on for a vote. This will be a hand count, the same as before. People sit, and behind me, Jen will look to, and then Liddy has from her over to the high school driveway, and Carrie has the rest of the vehicles. All those in favor, and hopefully there'll be more than 50, please raise your white cards.
Only 18 left.
And those opposed, if you would raise your white cards to be counted. So the tally then is 56 in favor, 0 opposed, and the motion so carries. Article 53, to see what sum the voters of the town will raise and appropriate for the annual payments on debt service. Is there a motion?
Yeah, the warrant committee recommends passage of Article 53 in the amount of $301,387.
Or $397.
$397.
Yep. Moved and seconded by the warrant committee, the figure is printed in the warrant. Question or discussion? Hearing none, we'll call this on for a vote. Again, a hand count. All those in favor, if you would please raise your white cards. We're getting close to that 50 mark. 15. So if anybody can stay a few minutes longer and keep us at 50 or more, that's great.
Lock the doors.
And all those opposed, if you would raise your white cards. Zero. So the tabulation there is 50 in favor, none opposed. Article 54, to see what sum the voters of the town of Mount Desert will vote to raise and appropriate in additional local funds. Is there a motion?
Yeah, the warrant committee recommends passage of Article 54 in the amount of $2,052,242.
Yep.
Moved and seconded by the warrant committee to recommend the figure of $2,052,242. Question or discussion? Hearing none, we'll call this on for a vote. All those in favor, if you'd please raise your white cards. This is a hand count. All those opposed, if you would raise your white cards.
Those card readers can put you right out.
Zero. Zero. The tally in this one is 58 in favor and 0 opposed. It's that late night effect, I think. Article 55.
Bill?
Yes.
I do have a question about a much earlier Article 6. I'm wondering, so I don't want to interrupt. I was going to bring it up at the end.
Okay.
I wonder if we can reconsider it before we adjourn.
Okay, all right, you need to make a motion to reconsider. This is the one we passed over. So now we're in Article 55. To see what sum the voters' amount does, it will authorize the school board to expend and this for the town's contribution to the total cost of funding public education from kindergarten to grade 12. This is the Essential Programs and Services Funding Act. Is there a motion?
Yes, the warrant committee recommends passage of Article 55 in the amount of $4,982,955.
And second.
Moved and seconded by the warrant committee to recommend passage that the figure is printed in the warrant. This is also a hand count. Question or discussion? Hearing none, we'll call this on for vote. All those in favor of the figure as moved, if you would raise your white cards. All those opposed, if you would raise your white cards.
Oh, sorry. So you're reaching. Automatic.
Where's Lydia? Zero. So the tabulation is 55 in favor, 0 Opposed. Article 56, in addition to the amount in Articles 41, 55, shall the school board be authorized to expend such other sums? And what is the motion?
The warrant committee moves passage of Article 56.
Second.
Moved and seconded by the warrant committee. This is not a hand count to recommend passage of Article 56. Question or discussion? Hearing none, we'll call this on for a vote. All those in favor of the motion before us recommending passage of Article 56, if you would please raise your white cards. Thank you. All those opposed, if you would please raise your white cards. Thank you. And that article so passes. Ladies and gentlemen, we have one more article, but I'd ask if you would bear with me, because after that I'd like to entertain Kathy Miller's motion, and then also Superintendent Gauss wished to say something. I believe Derlin does as well. So this last article is Article 57. Shall the inhabitants of the town of Mount Desert adopt a resolution to endorse a declaration of climate emergency? Is there a motion?
Yes, the warrant committee moves passage of Article 57.
And second.
Moved and seconded by the warrant committee to recommend passage of Article 57. Any question or discussion? Yes. Matt.
I don't want to be up here. If you look at, and I know I'm in the minority on this, and I know that because 17 members of our warrant committee voted to recommend passage, and 4 of the 5 members of our Board of Selectmen voted to recommend passage. Guess which one I am? And I really support this, but from the start, I've had some issues with just some of the language. I think this is an excellent draft that we have here, but I don't think it's complete. And it's cold and everyone wants to go home, so I'm just going to quickly point out a couple of things. First off, if you look at the explanatory note, it says this article and the resolution here in reference directs the Board of Selectmen of the town of Mount Desert to develop a plan to bring activities of the town government to zero carbon emissions by December 31st, 2030 for presentation at the next town meeting. And that's fantastic. But if you look at the actual text in the resolution, nowhere in that text does it actually direct the Board of Selectmen to do that. So to me, that's a very quick fix that we can do. If we end up having a special town meeting, we can get this cleaned up. Just one more thing. There's a lot of whereases and henceforths if you actually look at the article, and I believe that's right around page 54 or so in your booklet, if you actually want to read the resolution itself. And I think it's important to do that, and so you can see sort of some of the details. If you go down most of the page, again, below all of our henceforth and let it be resolved, etc., we've got 3 little points, A, B, and C, and that's really the meat of the resolution. And I think it's fantastic, but again, there's one phrase in there that I think needs to be changed because it presents an inaccurate view of what we as a town hope to do. And specifically in section A, it says initiate additional greenhouse gas reduction and reduce as much as possible townwide greenhouse gas emissions. Well, there's a lot we can do to reduce greenhouse gas, carbon emissions, etc. But are we really going to do, let's be honest, are we really going to do everything we need to reduce it as much as possible? And the example I'll give is very, kind of juvenile, but I'll use it just as an example. Campfires. Are we going to ban campfires in the town of Mount Desert? If we want to reduce emissions as much as possible, we need to do that. And so that's why I don't like that phrase, as much as possible. What we should be saying is, for example, when we find solutions to reduce emissions that can be administered in a practical manner that is not cost prohibitive, that's what we'll attempt to do. And it would accomplish the same thing, but it would just be a more realistic view of what we're actually going to be doing. I've got a few other things, but I can see it's a little cold, so I'll just leave it at that. Again, I support this, And you can be very much in favor of what this is, where this is trying to take us, and still vote against it, and that's what I will be doing. And I hope if we have a special town meeting, that we see just a cleaned up version of this and we can vote on it at that point. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? And I think in order to vote on this, given the lighting conditions as they are, I would ask maybe if we do one more hand count on this, if there's no other discussion. All those in favor of the motion before us, which is to approve Article 57, if you would please raise your white cards. Okay, she's got us. $13. $17. Okay. And opposed? Okay, thank you. So the tally is 43 in favor, 9 opposed, so the motion carries. Now, to get to Kathy's point, Kathy's making a motion to reconsider to go back to Article 6. Again, if that motion has been seconded by Mr. Miller, that is not a debatable motion, but it does require, let me just double check on that, but it does require a 2/3 vote in favor. Let's see if I've got this. Kathy, did you want to speak to this motion?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, I would do it right away because I'm not easy.
All right, there were 3 articles that were passed over because of just technical issues in the presentation here. And in this Article 6, this is about adding a definition of footpaths and excluding footpaths and sidewalks from setbacks. There's also an explanation that clearly spells that out. Had the definition of footpath, that whole paragraph, been underlined, and then 3 words underlined in the definition of setback, we would have been able to vote on it. I would just like to point out that it's 3 words not being underlined that is preventing us. I think that there's sufficient explanation here, and I think that this is something that we should consider and not wait for a special town meeting or another year to consider. And the reason is because representing Montezert 365, we've just built a large building at 6 Old Firehouse Lane, Seacoast Mission, and 2 residential tenants as well as our offices are there. We installed the sidewalk, and because of this issue and this ordinance that we knew was going to be changed, we have not been able to complete the last 5 feet of this sidewalk. And so we have a pine path from the roadway into the existing sidewalk. And we've been waiting for today so that we could just complete that project. There may be many other projects around town that would like to have this changed, and it does seem to make sense in any case to have a sidewalk go out to the edge of the property or to the road, and that's why it's being changed, is because it should have been changed a while back, and now we're finally getting to it. So I would like for us to consider this and vote on it today.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
I just spoke to Andy Hamilton, and he said it's actually up to you. If the language in the warrant is understandable to the people present, then he says that we can act on it.
Oh,
What is that?
you can thank him for me.
I will.
So what I'm going to rule is I'm going to say that we'll then vote on that motion to reconsider. And if you feel that, we'll vote on the motion to reconsider, and I will do that on a majority basis. So all those in favor of reconsidering our vote on Article 6, if you would raise your white cards. Okay, thank you. Then all those opposed? Okay, then I believe that in fact we have voted to reconsider Article 6, so now we're back to Article 6, and the question would be, shall an ordinance dated entitled with that amendment, shall we approve it or not? All those in favor, I'm going to rule that this is something we can vote on. If you please so indicate by raising your white cards. Okay, thank you. And those opposed? Then I find that we have approved Article 6. Thank you. Now, Superintendent Gauss is asked to speak, and he's been very patient.
Thank you, Bill. I know people want to move on. I just wanted to take a moment to, it's been a very, very difficult year for everyone, families, staff, and really appreciate your support and patience of our kids and our schools, and moreover, your continued support for our students, staff, and schools. We don't take that lightly. It's a privilege to serve as your superintendent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. Then drilling has some very important comments to make. And then we will have my favorite motion.
Lost my, there it is. Thank you.
Kathy Bahar, our retiring treasurer, please come forward. You couldn't let Kathy go without saying a big thank you to the town of Mount Desert for all the great work that she has done with us over the past 11 years. And to show the appreciation, I'd like to give her a gift that I think that she wears will always remember the town of Mount Desert and the time that she spent here. Kathy, thank you very much for all you've done, and I hope you enjoy it.
Though. This reminds me of my first town meeting in 1979 when I was town manager in Winter Harbor, and I forgot to turn the heat on in Hammond Hall before we had town meeting. It was a little frosty. I really do appreciate being able to work here and work for all you people, and with all you people, it's been a pleasure. we had good times and bad times, but I think the town is in really good shape for the next part of its lives, growing, and I'm really proud to have been a part of it. The other little note that I have to say in parting is when I came here for the third time in 2008 for a full-time job, I bought a new car. And it now has 215,000 miles. And it's now time to retire the car along with Kathy. So I appreciate all that you've done. Thank you.
The last thing I'd like to do is just to present our annual Town of Mount Desert Spirit of America Award. I believe this is the 5th year we've been doing this. It recognizes great citizen volunteers. I'm sorry that our recipient cannot be here tonight, but we have his daughter, Wendy Littlefield, because Dana Haynes, who has put in over 60 years of service in the town of Mount Desert, is one of the most special people that we would ever have the wonderful legacy to have as a citizen. Dana has been serving on committees for so long we can't even identify the first one that he served on. But he did wonderful things, like he was the fire chief, he was on the ambulance committee, over 20 years on the harbor committee. Just somebody that you would be really proud to call your friend and neighbor. And I'm so glad to be able to give this plaque to Wendy to give to Dana. So thanks to Dana for all he's done.
And thanks to all of us who were here tonight. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Moved and seconded. It's not debatable, so I would ask everybody who's in favor of adjourning to raise your white cards. Thank you. And those opposed? So we are adjourned. Thank you very much.